Hello, everyone. Welcome to this call. So this call might be a bit different than what you're used to, but if you just hang in tight, it's all going to probably tie in together. It's all going to hopefully tie in together to what we're doing. My name's Hunter. I am the communications and community organizer for CHEJ. Today, we're going to be having a call on user experience for environmental justice. That term might be a bit fuzzy to some of y'all, but we're going to hopefully through this call make it more relevant. That's what we do. So just for housekeeping rules, everyone is going to get a recording of this call, probably a few days afterwards. We're also going to get all the slides. And if there are any more resources, just please let us know in the chat and we can give those to you in the follow-up email after this call. So hosting this call is going to be CHEJ's own IT and media coordinator, Gregory Colin. He has 14 years of experience in UX and also environmental justice. His experience matches very well with what the topic is today. I will also be helping with this presentation later on. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. And I hope y'all follow along and enjoy. Greg, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing the screen. You can start whenever you want.
All right. Thank you, Hunter. And thank you, everyone, for being here. So everyone, I'm sure, is very familiar with the process of when you are trying to get things done, you go through a process. You want to understand the problem. You want to validate what you think is the path forward, and then you want to go ahead and take action, and then you want to reevaluate. This is a process that is used in user experience, but there are some particular methods that I want to go through as we talk about the subject. It's defined really as a field of research and design where you are creating products or services, and you want to think about the user or who you are serving. You want to think about them first and foremost. If you don't have a problem to solve, you need to define what the problem is. So thinking about how they're interacting, you want to think about how they're feeling about it, how satisfied they are. Is it usable? Is it efficient? And what is their emotional response? Some of the keywords that you think about are usable, equitable, enjoyable, and useful. You can apply this to whether it's a service or to whether it is a process. When it is usable, you want to make sure that it's easy to use, that the purpose of what you are doing is absolutely clear. Think about when you're creating a website or when you're putting together a campaign or a communication strategy. You want to know exactly what it's there for. When it's equitable, it's available to people of all abilities. And when it's available to people of all abilities, more people are included. Can someone who has deficiencies in eyesight participate? Someone who is not able to hear well, can they participate? The more that you're able to invite people in, the more equitable it is. Is it enjoyable? How do they feel when they're participating? Let's say you have a website again. If you've ever gone to a website and you've tried to visit on your mobile phone, if you've ever been, let's say, frustrated with that experience, you may feel like, I'm not doing this. I'm never coming back here. But for places that actually do things right, you may actually feel a little bit of delight, like, wow, how did they know? How did they know to autofill this? How did they know to put this there? You want to be able to tap into the enjoyable aspect. And then, is it useful? So specifically, does it solve a problem and what are you solving for? And we're going to go through a process to make sure that we understand that. I want to bring this into the real world, taking a look at the evolution of the ketchup bottle experience. This is something that would be pretty easy to understand, and you've probably noticed over time how it's changed. It started as a glass bottle. When we talk about pain points, we're talking about the problems that we're trying to solve. The ketchup would pool at the bottom. You're trying to get the last little bit of ketchup out. You can't squeeze it. You have to hit it on the top. So there were pain points that were addressed by creating a wider bottle that could sit on its cap as a base so that the ketchup pools at the bottom, which is actually where the cap is. And then it was made of a squeezable plastic so that you could actually get a little pressure out there and get the ketchup out. So these little improvements, they're things that the people that you serve may not be able to specifically ask for, but they know how to tell you what's wrong. We can't get the ketchup out. Now, how can you solve the problem? So to define the problem, you want to conduct UX research. This is usually the first stage of anything, whether you're trying to communicate, whether you're trying to create, you want to go through a process to understand the people that you serve. And in this case, we may be talking about community members, we may be talking about supporters, we may be talking about a legal department, but you need to define what the needs of the people that you serve are. And you can do that through surveys and interviews. You want to gain insights, observe how they use things, observe where they run into their pain points, and then you want to use that to inform your design or your strategy going forward. So in order to begin this process, we have 3 things that you want to start with: personas, market research, and forming a hypothesis. It sounds a lot like a scientific method, the first step. When you're creating your personas, you have an assumption of who you're trying to serve and what problems do they have. I have John here. He has these certain conditions. He lives in this area. He communicates via text. I have Jill over here. She has this community problem. She tends to respond to email. She's a mother. What do you know and how do you understand the people that you serve? So those are your personas. You're going to create those, and then you're going to do market research. So if you're trying to get a message out, if you're trying to get people to take action, if you're trying to create a new website, you want to take a look at what good examples are that match your criteria. How did people get certain things done? That's going to inform overall generally what looks good, but it's not going to be specific to your community or the people that you serve just yet. This will serve as a guideline. And then you want to form a hypothesis. So from your perspective, you have an idea of who you're serving, what their problem is, and what may solve it. That's all going to come together to form a hypothesis that you want to test against. You want to actually find out, is my hypothesis valid or will it be invalidated? So moving forward, let's find out how we can test our hypothesis. And this is a process that anybody can go through. You want to actually get in contact with members of the community that you are serving, people that will volunteer a little bit of time or for a little bit of incentive will participate in one of these tasks. What you'll see here is card sorting, observing user tasks, surveying, and interviewing. This is how you're going to gather real information. You want to actually ask people what their pain points are. So when you're conducting a card sort, you're going to come up with several terms or words related to, for example, on your website, how you may want information arranged, or you may come up with words and terms that are related to a problem or an issue, and you'll want people to actually structure them in the order of importance. And you'll do this with a few people, and that's going to help you get a pulse of what people actually find important to you, important to them. Another thing that you can do is you can observe user tasks. So this is really helpful when you're dealing with, let's say, a layout, particularly a website, or it could be taking a look at a schematic for how you want to set up an event. You want to put together that schematic or wireframe that represents your ideal. This is your hypothesis of what looks good, and then put it in front of the user or the community member, and then ask them to complete a certain set of tasks. If you ask them, how can you donate on this website wireframe, or how can you find certain information, observe them trying to do that, and then see if there are any pain points that you can understand or learn from that process. If you're having them look at a schematic, can they understand, where can they go to get certain things done? And then again, ask them questions, and then, you can move on from there. Surveying is a little more hands-off. You can want to put together a form that represents your hypothesis. In this case, I would recommend something like Google Forms. It's free to use. Put together a set of questions that, what is most important to you, A, B, C, or D? Have you had difficulty getting in touch with a legislator via these methods, or what has worked for you? You basically want to ask questions to validate or invalidate that hypothesis, and you want to learn from it. And then finally, the interview process, either through something like Google Meet or Zoom. You want to go face to face and ask them the questions. So the last time you tried to participate in a rally, what went right, what went wrong? The last time that you conducted a communications campaign, what did people respond to? What did they not respond to? The last time you were on the website, were you able to do what you need to do? That can oftentimes turn into a conversation, and you can learn things that were not on the script. So somebody might tell you, well, the last time I was over on this website, this was such a great thing that, I wish I saw in other places. You will learn a lot from that process. And then moving forward, once you collect that information, you'll want to synthesize it with what you assumed, and then you want to take what you've learned and update those personas. So the people that you've talked to, the stories that you've heard, the responses that you've gotten, the new pain points that you've learned about, you want to start updating the personas and get a better understanding of the people that you're serving. And then wireframing. This is more specifically for web, but you can substitute strategize, you can substitute schematic for this part. Update your wireframes for your website, update your plan for your product, and then retest. Go through the process again and see if you're more in alignment with what people have told you. So this quote here, I call this the better horse. This is a case of you can't always believe what you read on the internet, but I did think that this was fascinating, and it does have an application here. So this is a quote that's often attributed to Henry Ford in the UX world. Although there's no actual evidence that it's true, it's used on two sides. The quote goes, "If I asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse." So on one side of the UX world, for folks who, let's say they put a lot of stock into their assumptions, they don't want to find out what the people are actually asking for. They may think that if I ask them, they won't know how to tell me. And that's essentially what you get here. They're going to tell me they want a faster horse. They don't know how to tell me they want an automobile. But on the other side of the debate, and this is the side that is honestly going to yield you the results, because you do need to find out what the pain points are. You're not looking for them to tell you the solution. You're looking for them to actually define the problem. So when you ask, what do you want? And they say a faster horse, what they're looking for is something that is not as slow as what they have now, but it's up to you to take your research and to help innovate and create that answer that they couldn't quite tell you. So you still have to do the work, but this whole process is about defining the problem as it actually is, not as you assume that it is. And so some of the tools that I mentioned earlier, I wanted to make sure that I could put these in front of you, and that they are accessible, easy to use, and that in order to accomplish the UX tasks that we described, that you can come in at the free level and be extremely effective. First is Google Forms, completely free. This allows you to send out surveys, collect responses, and then it has a very nice layout for you to share it with your team and to start going through statistics. How many people answered a certain way? What kind of responses that you got? And then you can export them into an Excel document. Figma, that is a tool that is used for wireframes and prototypes. It's very useful if you're doing web or you're creating basic layouts. This can help you get information in front of people quickly, and you can make easy adjustments right there on the web without downloading software. Canva, that is a great tool for graphic design. In this case, you may want to put together more realistic visuals. You may want to put together something for a product that you have. You could use this to solicit visuals on social media, to participate in some of your surveys, to make a call to action. I want to learn from you, and then Miro is a whiteboard collaboration tool where you can have multiple people in the file. And this is particularly useful if you want to do card sorting and information architecture. You can have simple exercises with a group of people. just type in what you find important to you. Type in what you like about this, type in what you don't like about this, and you can learn a lot in a group setting as you all collaborate over Miro. And then Google Meet and Zoom, both ways that you can conduct interviews with individuals. It's great to be able to see and see what their body language is, see what their facial expressions are as they're talking to you. You get a little bit more than just over a phone call. Google Meet gives you at least an hour for free. And in Zoom, you can also come in at the lower tiers and get done what you need to get done. So I know that as we've talked about user experience, there is a lot on the web that is to be done. There is a lot that is related to products and the services, but I do want to drive home that it is very relevant in the environmental justice world, in the organizing world, in the world of solving problems in general. As you saw with the ketchup bottle, it has applications in places that don't even look like it is remotely related to technology. And in fact, it can help you when you're even trying to determine strategies to communicate or engage individuals that use different technology or use less technology. You can apply this process when you're organizing for action, communicating, when you're raising funds, if you're doing it in person to fundraise, if you're doing it online, making sure that you actually understand what would create that delight when people are trying to contribute and what won't frustrate them. And then making sure that you're collecting data and that the information that you collect is accessible to you and your team.
Thank you very much, Greg, for presenting that. I wanted to build upon actually what Greg was saying. So I hope that we didn't lose a lot of people with lots of the tech and kind of business and product jargon. That is very important within the world of UX, but to reiterate what Greg was saying, we can take the exact principles of UX and apply them very easily to environmental justice. So UX skills such as attentive listening, questioning your community, building upon feedback, they all perfectly mirror EJ work. So the tools that he also presented can be very, very good for communications. We mentioned website design. UX probably does focus a bit more on the tech and the social media aspects, but we went ahead and created 3 examples to probably help hammer it in how this applies to you and your groups. So let's go ahead and start looking at one example. So the first example, a grassroots group in Montana is fighting against a local mine They would like to promote their social media their struggle via social media. They already have an account, but it does not seem to be gaining any traction. So this is pretty common, especially in the Montana area. Using the principles of UX, what do we recommend the group could do? Well, first they need to understand what the problem is that they're solving for. The group itself understands that the problem is the mine, but they need to understand the problem of how they communicate their problem. So for example, are they communicating via the appropriate avenue, or do they need to adjust their messaging and timing? Also, they need to ask, is social media even the right way to communicate? Most people understand or assume that social media is the best way to communicate the problem, but unless they actually start asking their community, interviewing their community, going out and researching their community, they might find out that maybe it's a population that prefers email, maybe but people prefer a phone call, maybe there's even a different alternative source, and they have to figure out, is social media even the appropriate way to contact people? So we also recommend to do this research, to then examine your findings and to determine the correct path forward. So hypothetically, maybe they did find out social media is the best way to communicate. And if they do, they need to figure out a way to structure their communication plan and their schedule. Maybe they found out that email was better. So then once they figure these things out, they need to deploy, test, and reevaluate. And it's very key because UX is really similar to EJ work in that it never ends. You want to constantly keep in touch with your community, with your base, with your target group. It is kind of gross probably to say target group, but as organizers, we do have a target audience. We do have people that we want to get our attention from. So it's same within UX. We want to get the attention. We want to make sure that our community has a really solid say so. We would continuously want to test it, reevaluate it, and make sure that our product, or which is our website, our group itself, our communication strategy, is perfectly in line with the people we're trying to communicate with. Example number 2, a group in Virginia is trying to target their message to elected officials. They would like to create an impactful, digestible message for these busy policymakers, but they keep finding themselves hitting a wall. So some UX options, it could be observe successful actions that have led to changes in the past. This is actually what most of y'all have probably done when talking to Lois Gibbs or Teresa or anyone else who you've seen being successful in making a change in the past. You want to copy, chameleon, mirror, you want to study them, see what they did. Same thing within UX. So we recommend also soliciting the participation insight. This is what most of y'all have done through CHEJ. You've talked to Steven, you've talked to Teresa, some of y'all have talked to Lois. You wanted to get, or even other EJ, successful EJ people. You wanted to talk to them, interview them, figure out, pick their brain, just figure out the ways to go about what you're doing. Maybe you're even curious about how certain laws have passed for things not related to environmental justice. You could research that. You could go into construction law. You could go into any different type of aspect and figure out what they did to make it successful. Granted, most of it's probably money, but you still need to do the research. And something that Teresa has said for the longest time is you need to make your messaging hard to ignore. Again, perfectly aligns with UX. But how do you do that? Is it constantly berating these policymakers? Is it constantly having a social media blast, an e-blast? Is it picketing constantly? That's kind of for you and your organizers to figure out and tailor it to. And then based on these insights, you need to apply the tools proven to have worked in the past. Donation drives, tabling, picketing events, constant talking, constant conversation with people who are related to the policymakers, who are all the policymakers, constant presence. And then finally, we focused on this fundraising example. So a group in Oregon would like to have an online fundraiser and to raise the money to remediate a defunct logging company polluting their community. So how would they promote this event? We suggest understanding the target audience. So figuring out who they want to get their donations from, who they want to address. It's done through creating their personas. It's done through doing their research on their target audience. Clear and concise messaging when they send the emails or they make the social media posts. Streamlined registration process. So there's a term in UX called friction. Friction just is anything that just makes the experience, whether it is a website, whether it's referring to a service. Friction is whatever makes it uncomfortable or unpleasant to use, and you want to do anything you can to reduce it. And then you also want to optimize for devices. So when you're creating this registration form, you want to optimize just means make sure that any device can use it, whether it be a laptop, a tablet, or a phone. A lot of people tend to ignore this, but it is very essential to actually pay attention to which device, to how your site or to how your registration form or to how your survey works on multiple different devices, so it's accessible for multiple different people. Then you want to be engaging, intuitive in the design of your website, your registration page, make it open, make it inviting. Don't overload people with too much. Like, we understand you probably want their email, their address, not their social security, where they live, all this information. If you could reduce it to just the bare essentials and make it as easy as possible for someone to just click and sign in, that will do wonders for increasing your registration rate. Personalized email campaigns. I don't know as well as this. Greg, could you step in to specify this part, please?
Absolutely. So when you're running an email campaign, what you've already done before is if you've started to understand your target audience, even created personas, you'll know that different messaging works for different sets of audiences. One thing that CHEJ has learned in the past is, let's say, college-educated mothers, they respond differently to for example, a father, for messaging, especially around children. You may want to personalize for age range when you're thinking about maybe a text campaign for somebody who doesn't use email, or when you're thinking about email campaigns for people who use mobile devices versus desktop. If you understand how people receive and react to these messages, you can do what is called segmenting your list and targeting specifically to those audiences. And that will also have the bonus effect of saving you email sends, which can oftentimes reduce the cost of sending out emails.
Thanks, Greg. Moving consistent social media promotion, having a really good schedule so people don't forget your event or fundraisers coming up. Live interactive features. This just means having a well-structured event, having a very good structure for the Zoom call, having a backup Zoom link, having really good times, providing solid links, and providing enough information for people to join via phone or any other way avenue that also make participation feel very encouraged. Gamification and incentives, they're an option. You don't have to do this. Lots of people, when they do go to an event, they want to feel rewarded, be it recognized, having like a little giveaway or some small milestones. It's not necessary, but it's a nice touch. And what is really essential is the follow-up and appreciation. Everyone wants to be appreciated. So immediately after you have your event, try to send out some personalized emails appreciating the people for participating, and if they donated, for their donations. It's a nice detail that makes people feel more personalized in the service. And again, we're not a service, but it is something that we need to understand to increase the participation for organizations. So finally, we're going to quick Q&A. It probably gave you all a lot of information. Maybe we can hopefully like digest it, and we can. Let's go ahead and start. Is it okay if I stop sharing my screen now? You
Yep.
good with it, Greg? Okay.
Sounds good.
So let's go ahead. Layla, do you have any questions from the chat?
No, the only question was if the slides would be provided, and I already answered that in the chat. So yeah, so the slides will be provided and the recording will also be provided.
Okay, if there's none in the chat, if y'all have any just questions, go ahead and jump in.
Louis Seller has a question, has his hand up.
Go ahead.
Very good, Greg and Hunter. This is very helpful. Where in what you have just described might be the place for popular education or brainstorming, which is done in some places, at least, on a planning pad? That's what I wondered about when I saw the whiteboard feature, because there's a whiteboard feature with Zoom. But it's kind of stilted. You get my drift, you know.
Like it's hard to use.
Yeah.
Yeah, oftentimes there can be it's sort of ironic that some tools, you know, in and of themselves, the user experience can also have some of their pain points, but over time we do see those evolve. Google Meet has a very nice whiteboard integration that allows you to stay on the call, but also bring in the whiteboard. And we can add that to a response later. I believe it's in the bottom right. Google Meet has some extra tools, and you should see whiteboard down there. That sort of helps reduce, you know, the need to have to go off to another tab and then share that and then bring it in.
Do we want to move to Kathy now, or Caitlin?
Yeah.
Sorry.
What programs have you found to?
Yeah, because I think Kathy raised her hand first. I'm so sorry.
Sure.
Kathy, you go.
What programs have you found to be the most useful in your work to get for appealing to public participation?
So for Userlytics is a good tool. I believe they have a certain amount of the free trial that you can use before it becomes a paid application. But you can put a lot into Userlytics and get it in front of people and record responses and so forth when it comes to sort of like an all-in-one solution. The rest of the tools listed, they are kind of pieces that have been helpful. So putting together mock-ups or even plans in Figma, people can come in and they can drop comments specifically on certain items. So let's say if you have a communication strategy, or you are just sort of whiteboarding how you're going to take certain actions, people can come in and drop comments specifically on what you're putting in front of them.
Caitlin.
I'm part of a number of groups that have a cooperative structure, and they're interested in having democratic participation and kind of horizontal organizations. So instead of having a president and a vice president, there's rotating roles. So every 3 months, a different person is facilitator or note taker. There isn't like a dedicated secretary for 2 years or 3 years. And a lot of the groups I'm in won't use a tool like Zoom. They'll only use tools that are open source and that are democratically governed themselves. So I just posted, but one of them is lumio.org, and Lumio is open source, I want to say, but it's also cooperatively owned. And one of the tools that it has is dot voting. So you can give, each person gets 1 vote, but they might have 5 dots or points to distribute over multiple options. And I haven't seen that in a lot of other places. So you can allow weighted voting in a decision-making process. And the 2 platforms instead of Zoom that people use are Jitsi, JIT.SI, and the other one I didn't put in. I put that one in the post, but the other one people use is called Meet.coop, run over a big blue button. And again, this is kind of the equitable democratic side of technology, of where people value that the tech tools themselves are democratic and not corporatized. And maybe somebody else could speak more to that, but I've really appreciated Lumio for the governance practices and the facilitation of meetings, and kind of that being able to deliberate on proposals and have a decision-making process that's more collaborative. And I haven't really seen another tool that does that the way Lumio does that. So I want to recommend it to everybody.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I'll have to dive into that. There's several tools that come up on a pretty regular basis, but what's most important is that, again, the people that you work with, the people that you serve, that you all are in agreement that the tools that you're using are what make you the most comfortable and actually achieve your goals. So whereas something might not do it, you don't want to discourage participation because, let's say, you insist on using Zoom when everybody else wants a different platform.
Speaking of tools, there's a question in the chat about has anyone used Hotjar for seeing how people are using their website? If so, any tips for how to use it? So I don't know if that's something you're familiar with, Greg.
Yes, have used Hotjar, particularly when it comes to larger websites. Believe you can observe eye patterns and heat tracking maps, something like that. It's a bit more advanced and really specialized to the web, but I do highly recommend it if you are getting into more advanced analytics on the website. You know, surface level, you can gain some things from Google Analytics, which is free. Hotjar has a premium level, but I do believe that it is worth it, especially for all of the specialized features that they add. Quite tech heavy.
Thank you. And then the other question is about using ChatGPT or other AI tools and how that can be used to develop and refine messaging and also generate ideas, and if you think that's a good approach.
So this actually did come up in a conversation that I had with Hunter. It's very much a still in debate type thing. My personal approach is I would recommend getting ahead of the trends. If it can help you, I suggest giving it a try. Learning how to prompt it, learning to, let's say, I'll give you a good example. So let's say you are trying to organize a rally for a particular action. You can give it a scenario. You can say, ChatGPT, you are a community organizer and you need to bring together this many people. You need to raise money and you need to do it in this town. How would you go about it? So you sort of have to prompt it with a story and give it a scenario. But I would recommend playing around with ChatGPT, especially since it is free. It's new technology and it's not likely to go anywhere anytime soon.
So a really interesting thing that was brought up in the chat, maybe not interesting, but so I'm very glad, Judy, you were honest in saying that this is all very overwhelming. We do provide consulting, Greg and I. If you ever want to have a personal call with us to break all this down, we do communications consulting. So Teresa and Steve, Teresa will do strategy, Stephen will do science, and Greg and I do communications. And we like to meld all of them together because yeah, UX is pretty overwhelming. And we try to do the best that we could in this presentation to break it down to the bare bones, because it can go far deeper than this. But if anyone on this call would like to have a conversation about communication, UX, social media, we provide free consulting at CHEJ.
And I would like to add to that, just sort of as you get used to the process, I mean, there is jargon, but once you go through the process, you'll find that it offers you a lot of confidence and reassurance because you're actually gathering the data that you need to have an informed decision. Whereas somebody might say, you know, let's run a campaign and let's make it purple, but you know, you find out that people don't respond well to the color purple or something like that. You have the data and then the other person might not. And then once you do the thinking up front, your main goal is to make sure that the people that you serve don't have to do the thinking. Have you ever sat down in a chair and ever wondered like, wow, who came up with these armrests? Like, I didn't even know I wanted these, but you know, there was a time before armrests, somebody actually had to think and put it there. And once you do that thinking, everybody else will appreciate you for it.
Yeah, Greg, we were having a conversation yesterday and you actually put it to words very well, in that within UX, you have to let your mind, like your assumptions go. So you have to, granted, everyone in these organizations has a problem, be it a toxic mine, a factory pyrolysis plant, all these problems exist, and we all know that there's a problem. But within UX, you have to take that problem out of your head and figure out what people actually see as the problem. Some people, I'm pretty sure we've all encountered this, some people don't even know there's a pyrolysis plant, some people don't even know that there's an environmental issue. And it is up to the job of whoever's using UX to figure out why this person thinks this way, and then to figure out how to address that person. Because you know there's a problem, but they might not know there's a problem. Did I word that the way you said, Greg, or do you want to add more to that?
I mean, that's how it is. So it's easier said than done, which is why there is a process and you do have to go through learning, testing, and learning again. But yeah, the main point is to let go of your assumptions and to actually learn what the truth is. Because if you're solving the problem that you think exists, but you don't take the time to actually learn the problem or why there's a problem, then you won't actually be solving it. And there's a lot that exists in our blind spots that we want to uncover. And we understand that there may be a lot of frustration. There's a lot of urgency at times also, which makes it a little bit hard to feel like you have the time to go through a process. But the time that's spent up front will save you time, and it will save you, you know, a little bit of having to redo things later.
It seems like we got another question in the chat. Do you have recommendations for community platform tools to help facilitate communication within our organizations? Besides Lumio, Facebook groups are not ideal. Then they asked maybe Google groups instead, Slack, WhatsApp. So yeah, maybe get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, in fact, just at the end, the ones Slack and WhatsApp are generally reliable. WhatsApp, especially if you know, if some of your group is not necessarily, in the country, or, it works pretty reliably. You might also say Discord, which is just another version of Slack, basically. It comes down to preference again, and knowing who you're serving. To some people, Slack may seem a little chaotic. I do find that a lot of workplaces use it, and it is actually very effective in keeping open communication and delivering notifications. Have not used Circle or Mighty Networks. But I would say that Slack and WhatsApp are very solid if we're talking about today.
Any more questions? Louis, is it Louis or Louis?
It's Louis Zeller.
Okay, sorry, my grandfather, he had the same spelling and it was Louis.
This may sound funny, but there's a lot of community and issue campaigns that we worked on in the southeastern United States have very poor internet connections for one reason or another. So we're reduced to telephone conference calls, which are of necessity. How does these techniques, UX, work in that kind of situation where you have telephone only?
So in a case like that, you have to understand that a lot of the conveniences that people tend to rely on and almost take for granted. Hey, I sent a calendar invite to this person, so I know they'll show up. You can't make those assumptions. You have to be absolutely sure when you are communicating, time, how long, somebody who is responsible perhaps for taking point for confirmations. So in that case, you're not exactly solving for you're not exactly solving for how to change the way that they're communicating, but how to accommodate the way that they're communicating. So just really staying on top of the the organization of the calls and making sure that no assumptions are made is really kind of the essence of that situation. Of course, timing, some of the things that we kind of know, making sure that the timing is convenient for everybody. Nobody's going to send out an automated poll and click and lock in their favorite time. So there would just have to be that concise communication.
Because sometimes in the situation, you can't make it any better, so you just have to live with it and do the best you can, sadly.
And really it's finding those efficiencies, because then let's say at the same time, making sure that, all right, if a lot is being done over the phone and, the internet is not great, what is being done through the mail? Let's say something like a homeowners association, a lot of them, they still send out mail because you're going to get that in your mailbox, and that might be the place where you send important reminders and dates and things like that. Okay, so the things that we talked about on the call, just to reiterate, you're going to get this in the mail, if that's what's necessary to keep everybody on the same page.
Good, thank you.
Anyone else have any other questions or comments? Well, if not, Greg, I think we can give everyone 10 minutes back of their day.
All right, that sounds like an experience too.
Yes. Again, this probably has been very different for most people, but we thought it was still very helpful, insightful for the more communication side of organizing. Again, this will be sent out to everyone probably within the next few days. It'll be a link, it'll be some slides. If you guys want anything more, you can email me. Actually, I don't have a CHEJ email. I have a personal email, and it is this that I'm putting in the chat. Do you have a CHEJ email, Greg?
I do not, but I can provide this email here.
Or you can always call the CHEJ office and ask for Greg and Hunter. You can even send an email to CHEJ, I believe it's CHEJ2, isn't that right, Greg?
CHEJ2@chej.org.
I'll put that in the chat as well.
Before we close out, may I say something in response to
Mhm.
Lewis's question? This is Sonia in Philadelphia.
Go ahead.
I was thinking about Lewis's question. I'm in Philadelphia now, but I'm also from a small southeastern town. And one of the things that if he sends mail out, that's going to cost. And I don't know if organizations have costs. Sometimes there's a central place in town where people might go. And whether it's a synagogue or a church or a temple or a laundromat or whatever. And what I sometimes found myself having to do was to post notices in that central place to get it might be 3 or 4 different central places, a grocery store even, that everybody's going to go at least once every 2 weeks or once a week and do updates like that, if it's not anything too secretive. So just thinking about cost saving kinds of things, because we have the same problem of spotty internet when I'm in the South, when I'm in Florida.
Absolutely.
Just an idea.
No, that's a great idea. And one of the, again, back with the principles of UX is different things may work for different folks, but it's important to listen to what works and why. So to synthesize one solution with another, somebody might say, okay, yes, it's worthwhile to send out these letters, but on the other hand, it's not worth it. We need to find savings. We know people go here, they can't miss it. Let's do that as well. Some people may want to do a little combination of both. So, again, all about listening and taking in, sort of, as we said, sort of what works and who
Yeah.
has done it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Greg. Thank you for hosting. And thank you all for attending. I hope you all have a, so sorry. I hope you all learned something new and you will all receive this shortly. So thank you all very much.
Thanks, everyone.